I would like to introduce our panel discussion now, moderated by Julianne Gauthier and Stephanie Perrault-Bittner. Julianne Gauthier is a business coach and creator for Thriving Tides podcast. Julianne also helps to facilitate our current accelerator program. Stephanie Perrault-Bittner is the owner of Summer Street Creative and Thriving Tides podcast. For our panelists, we have Rebecca Kozak, who is the owner of Cherry on Top Creamery in Surrey, PEI. And we also have Kaitlyn Reher, who is the owner of Simply for Life. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Latifa, and welcome everyone. We're really excited to be in person. It feels so great. And sitting here with these lovely ladies tonight to talk to you a little bit more about entrepreneurship, what it means to us, and of course, self-care, because that is what Thriving Tides is all about. And we know that taking care of ourselves so that we can show up for our businesses, the people in our lives, and for ourselves is so very important. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about me. Stephanie's going to introduce herself, and then we're going to get to know these lovely ladies a little bit more too. So as Latifa said, I am a business coach. I work mostly with leaders around PEI, doing that through Chandler Coaches, and I've been there for a few years now. I also am a tourism operator. I own Joey's Deep Sea Fishing along with my brother. So we're heading into our 4th season of being the owners of that, which is really exciting. Crossing our fingers for a good tourism season this year. The last couple summers have been really tough, but I've learned so very much about myself, about being resilient and just trying new things and finding different ways to make things still work. So that's been a long haul, but really, really ready for summer to come along again now too. I also work volunteering with the Canada Games, which is going to be an exciting addition to the island next year, which is a lot of fun. And I serve as the chair of the board for Central Coastal Tourism Partnership. So I have my hands in many, many pots. And so that's why I double down on my self-care on a regular basis and really find time to put my time where it most is important to me. And that lights me up so that I have the energy to keep going. So I'm going to let Stephanie tell you a little bit about herself as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't have as much of a full schedule as Julianne does. I don't have as many hands and pots as she says. Hey, I am Steph. It's a little different doing this in front of like a crowd instead of our closet back home. So it's a little different. But yeah, I'm Stephanie. I am a graphic and web designer. I actually formerly owned Summer Street Creative. It is actually currently in a little bit of a hiatus, but that'll be a episode to come. So definitely listen for the podcast to hear the whole juicy story. No, that's not juicy. To hear the whole story of it. But with that being said, I'm really excited to hear more on everyone's stories, and I'm hoping to connect after the panel as well. But Kaitlyn, if you want to take it away.
Sure. So I'm Kaitlyn. I own Simply for Life in Charlottetown. It is a franchise-based business. So I was an employee there for 3 years before I purchased it from previous owner in 2018. So it's been 4 years in business, which is hard to believe it's been that long, but also feels like a lifetime. Yeah, so it's good.
Well, I'll let you tell them your real name, Rebecca.
Yes, so I'm Rebecca, but we're all friends now, so you can call me Becky. It's what I put on my formal documents, so I know if somebody's coming at me with a business proposal. So I own Cherry on Top Creamery, which is a artisan small batch ice cream shop in Surrey, PEI. I don't know if any of you have been, but we make all of our own ice cream. Thank you. And by we, I mean me. I do all of it. I'm very used to the royal we, but it really is just exclusively me. So when you asked me what, we got the questions beforehand, spoiler, and you asked to talk about myself, and it's really hard because my whole life is the business. And so, you know, I make ice cream, I wake up, I make ice cream, I go to work, I think about ice cream. And so that's pretty much me in a nutshell, is ice cream these days.
I mean, there's worse things that you could be thinking about all the time. So.
I also have 3 dogs. I don't know.
I love it. That's great. And both of you have had the pleasure to either recently participate in a PEIBWA program or Becky's rounding out the last few weeks of the one that she's in. So Kaitlyn, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about Leading the Way program and what that meant for you and your business.
Yeah, it was great. I kind of stumbled upon it like by accident, I guess, which was good. And I know some of you guys were in that group with me, and you can probably agree like how valuable it was. Like some of the sessions we had, like you typically would pay really good money to have that value. So I thought it was awesome that that was provided for us. And yeah, for me, I got something out of every session, and it definitely wasn't my first time doing anything like that. Like I've worked with Julianne and I'm working with Sarah. So like the business coaching side wasn't something new, but something I'm always trying to learn from. Yeah, so I truly enjoyed it. I'm sure you guys could agree with that. Any other questions about it in particular? It was great. I don't know what else to tell
and
you.
it was a mix of virtual and in person.
Yeah, it was all virtual, which I was kind of a little disappointed. I like seeing people in person. I think it's just so much better. But yeah, it was convenient for it to be virtual because I know some of you guys are all over the island, so it made it really accessible, which I thought was great. And yeah, easier to fit in your schedule, and you don't have to travel too, which is good.
Yeah, that's great. Becky, tell us a little bit about your Accelerate Her program so far.
It's like my favorite thing I've ever done.
And no pressure with me being the facilitator.
I'm not kidding though. So we meet every Wednesday, and could be in person. And not very many people have gone. I think just you and Karen.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's great for me because they meet in Bedeck and I live in Surrey. So it's a bit of a commute for 10 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. So I love the virtual aspect. Most of the time I'm in my pajamas, which is a lot of fun. But the amount of knowledge that I've accumulated over the past, we're 9 weeks in now, is astounding. Every single week I fill up pages and pages in my notebook of things that I need to go back. And I did a business degree. Like I know these things, but to go and learn from people who are in it and professionals who know what they're talking about and can answer questions so specific to your business, there's nothing like it. And you're right, people would pay big money to be in a program like that, and it's totally free. I sound like an advertisement, but honestly, one of the best things I've done for my business so far.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And yeah, we're very, very lucky to have the PEI Business Women's Association provide programs like this. So for all of you behind the scenes at PEIBWA, thank you, because I know it's a lot of work to go into getting that funding, doing all the reports, all that kind of stuff. I'm being a chair of a nonprofit. I understand all the hoops that you have to jump through to do that. And the fact that you're willing to do that to support women like Kaitlyn and Becky and so many others of you in the room is just so heartwarming. It's great.
Let's do it. Yeah, usually we're in the closet and we can like kind of cut this out. So.
Don't mind our side banter.
Side banter. All right, so let's just jump right into it. I would love to know kind of like what the challenges you guys have both faced as young women in business, and how did you kind of pivot and overcome these challenges? Becky, let's start with you. You have a face. Let's see.
I'm just thinking of where to start.
It seems like there's a lot.
Yeah. So I don't know if any of you are from a culinary background, but that's where I started. I did a degree at Niagara College, and I've been traveling sort of all over Canada, all over the world, and working in different kitchens. And I absolutely did not want to do pastry at all. I had no interest. I loved doing it for myself, but I never wanted to make it a job because I thought then I won't love it anymore. A little bit true, I'm not gonna lie. But because of just the stigma of women in the kitchen, which all of those jokes, I'm sure you've heard them, you know, the stove and the oven and all, I don't even know them, but the bad jokes about women in the kitchen, that's the stereotype that men like to portray in kitchens. And it's not all men and it's not all kitchens, But I did find that it was really hard for me to get ahead. And so I constantly felt like I needed to prove myself even more and validate my place there and just really show that I was meant to be there and not just I was, a bubbly girl that was showing up to the kitchen for fun. I was actually serious about what I was doing. So I mean, I had to go into jobs and fully change my personality in order to be taken seriously, which is really hard for me. And that's where I started using Rebecca instead of Becky, because just so you know, it's kind of hard to be taken seriously when your name is Becky and you act like this. So I think like from day one, that was my biggest challenge. And it's just a perception that has been changing. And if you go to any of the food conferences, you'll hear about it. But it really does need to change in a lot of industries, but the culinary industry and hospitality is just so hard on women in particular. So
Is that why you decided to go into entrepreneurship, because of the kind of stigma that is still there?
I think it definitely pushed me faster. I have also had the privilege of working for just incredible men and women. I worked out at Richard Seafood in Cove Head, which best fish and chips on PEI. I'm sure you all know, you're a lot closer than I am. And Ryan there was fantastic. And it was working for him and driving back and forth to Cove Head from Surrey every day, where I thought I need to do something that's not this, and I need to work for somebody that's not somebody else. And it wasn't because he was a bad boss. It wasn't because I was deep frying fish. I just knew that I needed to do something else. And I think with all of the background that I had and all of the bad situations that I had been in before, I decided, well, it's time to just do it for yourself and make your own decisions, and off to the races.
Brave step.
It's terrifying.
If it's not a little bit terrifying, I mean, are we pushing ourselves hard enough, right? Let's hear from you, Kaitlyn. What's it been like being a woman in business?
Yeah, I think I can relate to you a lot, Becky, especially being like a young woman in business. Yeah, people just don't take you seriously and don't really assume that you mean real business, even though you do. So yeah, that's definitely a challenge. And then, yeah, like Becky gave it away. Like we did get the questions beforehand. So I was trying to reflect on this. And I think like my biggest challenge though, personally, is probably like myself as being a barrier. And maybe like the kind of stigmas there are towards women that maybe we aren't the best or that we can't do these things. Like society maybe puts those on us and we tend to believe them. So yeah, I think myself is probably my biggest challenge, and not letting the fear of failure stop me from like what I want to do. But yeah, like I could go on about every individual challenge I faced the last 4 years, and COVID was definitely probably one of the biggest ones. But yeah, definitely overall, don't let yourself stop yourself from doing what you want.
Do you have any practices that you've put into place over the last few years of how you can catch yourself getting in your own way and what you're doing to overcome that?
Yeah, I think it's like an ongoing practice. I don't think it's something you ever master or get really like good at. And I think it comes and goes. I was actually in a session today with Sarah about confidence, which is very fitting to today's speak. But yeah, I think it's just practicing it on an ongoing basis, and just finding tools that work for you and having the support around you of people that are going to help you like believe what you believe, and quieting those voices of people that maybe doubt what you're doing or maybe think you should be doing things differently, and doing what's best for you at the end of the day. And like you said too, Becky, like doing what you want and when you want, and just taking that step.
That's great. I want to hear your side of things too, Steph. As a graphic designer.
Putting me on the spot.
Yeah.
I'm not on the panel.
Let's do it. What's that been like for you coming up as a female graphic designer as well? Because you've been doing this for a number of years.
Oh yeah, I've been a designer for 10 years. Aging myself already. But yeah, no, it's been interesting. Luckily, like the creative field, I find there isn't as much of a stigma, thank goodness. Yeah, I'm not sure, Julianne, putting me on the spot here. Yeah, well, recently, the reason why I have are no longer with Summer Street Creative is because I've had a couple of things come up in my personal life, and sometimes it gets really, really hard. And I think the biggest thing too nowadays is we really have to look into support, and going into self-care a little bit more is really, really important. So it's kind of making those tough decisions when you're an entrepreneur. And do you take a hiatus on your business? Do you keep going and burn out? It's kind of like a catch-22. And like I said, we'll talk about that more in that episode. Try to spoil the episode, Julian.
Just want everyone to listen. It's fine.
Coming up.
No, it's good. It's, you know, I think the resounding theme here too is that no matter what industry you're in, when you're a woman in business, you're probably going to face some of these challenges, right? So I look around the room here. I know some of you I hope to get to know during the mixer, and there's a wide range of folks out here. So regardless of where we're at, we need to find that confidence to still push through and follow our dreams and not let any one person tell us that we can't have what it is that we believe we want to have. And as women, there's going to be more of that we're likely going to face, which is unfortunate. But the more that we show up and support one another, the more that we keep putting ourselves out there, hopefully the less this is going to be an issue, right? Like, let's say we're going to talk about this 10, 15, 20 years down the road. Hopefully it's not as much of a conversation, but we're all going to do our best to shift that, right? Awesome. So we have this wonderful room sitting in front of us, looking at us, captivated. What advice would you give to these folks looking back at us on chasing your dreams and being a woman in business?
Just go for it, I guess. No, I think it comes back to don't let your fear stop you, or let other people make you believe that you can't do something that you want to do. Yeah, that's it. Like, just do what you want and don't care about what other people think.
And that's great advice. I'm going to go a little bit of the opposite. Like, I just find that the culture that we live in right now is so like, find your side hustle, keep hustling. Like, it's just about pushing yourself to the absolute limit and breaking yourself working. And I am so guilty, like the most guilty of doing that. And I have such a hard time finding things to do that don't immediately in my head turn into a business. And it's the worst because you can't have a hobby because all of a sudden you're trying to monetize it. And I have a lot of great friends that work in the corporate world, and some of them are looking for, side hustles, and they're starting to like pour their money into it. And I think it's so important just in the world where you can work for yourself to just make sure that it's what you want to do, because giving up on something, although it kind of feels hard, it's not the worst thing. And like, especially if you try it and you try it as a business and it's not for you, you don't have to keep going. You don't have to keep putting yourself through that just because the world says you've got to keep hustling. So, I mean, don't be afraid to try anything you want, because if you want to make it a business, go for it. But if you start doing it and it brings you no joy at all, just stop, just walk away. There's no shame in that.
That's really good advice, because I feel like sometimes we get so, and like this was like personally for me, you get so enveloped in like your brand and your business becomes your personality. And it's so hard to like sometimes let it go. Like, what would be your advice for someone that kind of feels like, oh, this isn't really, sparking that joy, and I'm ready to possibly do the other thing that is kind of sparking more joy into business? What would you say?
It just depends on how invested you are. Like, at this point, for either one of us or all four of us, I suppose, to walk away from your business is probably a really big step. And it's probably a lot. But if you're, in a different job, I suppose none of you would really be working that corporate 9 to 5, or else you wouldn't be here. I don't know. But if you're just looking at a side hustle and you're, you know, buying a Cricut to do the tote bags, and that's your business. And then you say, I don't really like doing this anymore. I don't want to sell these to people. I don't like customers and all that. Just honestly, just cut your losses, because if you try and keep going, you're going to invest so much more of your time, so much more of your energy, and it's going to be even worse because you're just not going to like it. I started a bad drawing company on Etsy. It was called Average Rebecca, and people would send me their pets, and I would draw them really badly for them, and they would pay me $15 each. And I made like thousands of dollars doing this. But I hated it. I hated it. And it was so hard for me to walk away, because I was like, look at the money coming in. Just leave it. Just drop it and leave it.
Yeah, I think that's like a really good point. Like, it's like hard to walk away, but it's harder to try to make something successful that you don't love to do. Like it's going to be 1,000 times harder than doing something you truly enjoy. It's going to come easy, and it's not going to, like, it's definitely going to be a lot of work, but it's definitely a lot more work to do something you don't love.
Yeah. Well, especially like we all know, like our blood, sweat, and tears goes into our businesses, right? So if it's not lighting you up, it's not sparking that joy, it's definitely burning you out even faster than it would be otherwise. So I think permission was the word that just sprung into my head when Becky was talking there. And we have to give ourselves permission to do what really feels right for us. For me, like, expectations of others is huge for me. I hate disappointing others. I know that about myself. I talk about it openly. When I quit my full-time job to be an entrepreneur, and I had zero idea if that was actually going to pay my bills, the most terrifying thing I had to do was go tell my father. And he had the exact reaction I was expecting. But I still did it, right? And sometimes we have to jump off that ledge, and we have to truly believe in ourselves and know that if it doesn't work out, that doesn't mean that we are failures, and it doesn't mean that we are not enough. It just means that that's not the right fit right now, and it's full permission to just try something else, right? So thank you for that advice. That's really hitting it on the head. I know, so Kaitlyn, you expanded your store right as the pandemic showed up. Tell us a little bit about how you persevered through that.
I'm not really sure how I got through that, honestly. Yeah, we doubled our square footage. So we finished renos the end of like February, had our grand reopening, and then March we like closed the store for a few months. Yeah, it's kind of like a blur, honestly. I think in those times you're just kind of in like survival mode, do what you need to do to get through. But looking back, like I learned a lot. Like I learned that you can do things that are really hard. Yeah, and now I'm like super glad to have all that space with all the distancing. It worked out really for the best. But yeah, it was stressful, like financially, to take on such a like big undertaking and then not really seeing that like money come back in as expected, and then taking pretty much like a full year to recover and getting that revenue back up was like definitely scary. But I'm glad I did it. Like I have no regrets or anything, that's for sure. Which maybe in the time I probably thought it was a terrible idea, and I was like, why did I do this? But in the end, it did all work out. And I think it comes back to like doing what you feel like is best for your business, and maybe not just exactly what, like, I guess, how would I put this? Trying to take some emotion out of it, like, and not let like the fear of like what ifs stop you from doing it too. Like, I was definitely ready for expansion, but it was like holding back because it is a big financial commitment, and you're like, well, what if it doesn't like pan out? Like, what if a pandemic happens? How am I going to pay the bills? So I am really glad that I took that plunge, because looking back now, if I didn't do it then, I don't even know if it would have happened until maybe like now, which would have made everything look really different the last 2 years. So yeah, I think if you have a good idea and you think it's a good idea, it probably is. So go for it.
I like that. And I know, Becky, you've bounced around locations a little bit too, right? So that's been just a little extra on top of, getting your business up and off the
cherry
ground.
on top, maybe.
Yes, it is. I love the pun. Thank
Yeah.
you. How's that been for you because that's communication with your customers, that's, different things with your staff, learning different locations, that's adds to the complexity that's already there.
Yeah. Hopefully this summer I will be renovating my 4th and final location, but only one store, just 4 different iterations of cherry on top. It's been really hard. The hardest thing for me is not feeling like I can put the right amount of effort into advertising, because how am I supposed to tell people where to come find me and spend, thousands of dollars on an advertising campaign to then move the next year? So I've had some really lovely landlords and really great people, but I am looking at purchasing my own building. Fingers crossed, I put in an offer this week. But yeah, it's just really hard, especially if you have, something that requires a storefront and customer facing. And for me, not to get too much into ice cream laws, but I have to make all the ice cream on site in whatever space that I'm in. So last year I had 2 locations and I had to make ice cream in each location. And my ice cream machine broke in June, and the part still hasn't come from Italy. So I had 1 at each. But then I had to move my 400-pound ice cream machine back and forth from each location. So that was a challenge. But yeah, it's one of those things that, like I said, if it doesn't bring you joy, well, that part didn't bring me joy, but the whole business brings me so much joy. So I did that stuff because I love what I do and I love what I get to do, but it's never easy.
I have kind of a random question now. What brought you to ice cream, from the culinary background to ice cream? Now I'm just curious.
I don't know. I'm lactose intolerant. I honestly have no idea, and I wish I had a better story. I was working at COVID and I was listening to some podcast about bees, and bees are really cool, by the way. And it just came into my head that I should make ice cream. And then I could not stop talking about it. Anybody who worked with me that summer would tell you that I never, ever, ever stopped talking about ice cream. I was like, okay, I'm going to make this flavor and this flavor and this flavor. And I registered my business name. I had no plans of anything, and it just came out of nowhere. So, divine intervention, we'll call it. But yeah, it's an interesting choice, honestly.
That's amazing. So if you're in the crowd here and if you're just listening to a random podcast about bees,
or anything. Long drives seem to be people say they have ideas in the shower. For me, it's long drives, because then my mind goes and the ideas follow.
So as you guys know, Thriving Tides is a self-care podcast. So of course we have to ask about self-care and what you two do for self-care.
Yeah, what don't I do? I feel like I feel like I'm a pro taking care of myself. Not all the time, but yeah, I think it's easy to think about self-care as booking a facial, doing these things but sometimes those don't really fill us with what we need. And I find that for myself, I'm always, maybe going to the stereotypical self-care. I'm like, okay, I'm doing self-care. It's working, right? I'm feeling relaxed. But then you realize it doesn't do it. So I think for me, it's really spending quality time with people I care about. And just really making sure that you're relaxed and giving them your attention. So that's what really recharges me and helps me be my best self.
And your little walks with your puppy.
Yeah, my walks with Theo.
Taking him to work probably helps too, eh? That's kind of nice. Yeah.
Today. So yeah, he's my little companion.
And Kaitlyn was also on our season 1, I believe it was. And I don't have our episodes memorized, but she is in like 6, 7, something like that. So definitely take a listen to her episodes. And she goes like super in depth of like more self-care, and we talk more about the business and stuff too. So definitely take a listen to that episode, but would love to hear your self-care.
I'm really bad at self-care. I showed my fiance the list of questions and he goes, maybe you should Google something and just tell them that. So the thing is, I'm pregnant. I'm 5 months pregnant. So, which means that I have to take care of myself. And there are no other options because I'm not just taking care of myself anymore. And that's been really crazy for me. And it's been really hard so my self-care started with, getting a regular amount of sleep and not taking on too many extra shifts at my second job, and, saying no to things more often when I can't physically do them, which is really hard for me. But yeah, it's been a long time since I've thought about myself and put myself first. There's been a lot of time of putting everyone else and everything else above myself. So I'm really working on it, but I'm really not very good at it.
I would say don't sell yourself short. Often, like those things that you just listed are wonderful self-care practices, but like Kaitlyn said too, right? It can be very glamorized out in the world of, it's only bubble baths and facials and all these things, but really it is whatever it is that lights you up, right? So naps are one of my favorite self-care things. I had one this afternoon so that I could be ready for this today. Time in nature is one of mine too, but like spending quality time with people, like we all know who fills our cups and we walk away from feeling so energized and excited versus the people that we walk away from saying like, oh man, like I am exhausted after that 5-minute conversation. So just paying attention to those things and recognizing it and starting to say, oh, wait a second, like you said you don't do self-care and then you gave us 3 really good examples. So it's just kind of changing that narrative too, right?
Ow.
Yeah. Yeah. You're only going to get better. Now the awareness can be a big part of
I'm
it
working
too.
on it.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, that's good. And we'll maybe post baby, once things settle down, we'll have Becky on the podcast as well for a guest. I think that would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add too, I think for me, what made it easier to take care of myself and do more self-care is realizing that it's not a selfish thing to do, and that self-care is actually a great way to like work on your business, because the better you are, the better your business will be. So if you can change your mindset around it and realize that if you're working on yourself, you're actually working on your business, it can be a lot easier to do that.
I love that. So I'm keeping an eye on the time here too. We do have time for questions from you folks as well. If anyone has something that they want to ask any of us sitting up here, Latifah's going to help us out with a microphone over there so we can actually hear you. But what's popping to mind for everyone? I'm going to make sure someone's got to have a question out there.
Yeah.
Hi. I just know that you asked them what their main advice would be to this room of women, and I want to hear what your advice would be to us.
Oh.
Both of you.
Put me on the seat. For me, I think it's similar to what they said. It's believe in yourself and be willing to take those risks. I actually had a very long journal session last night in my journal thinking about that for myself and reflecting back. I'm coming up on how many years of being self-employed now? Like 3. And to not believe all the things that came up, right? So it's just, if you believe in yourself, you know that you're going to find that path. I'm a very future focused person. I'm a high controlling person, and I'm an Enneagram 3. So if anyone's familiar with Enneagram, it's just like, I'm always thinking about the future. And that gets me in trouble sometimes because I forget to come back to the present and really relish in where am I today and celebrate the accomplishments that I have so far. So don't forget to do that. Don't always be so focused on like, once my business gets this big or once my revenue is this number or anything, then, you know, I'm going to feel really good about myself. Like, you are enough and you are worthy right now as you are today. And a daily reminder of that helps you keep the energy to keep moving forward. And come to these events and join these free programs and do the things that surround you with other people who are in the similar boat. Many of us have like, I'm of all my like friends that I hang out with on a core basis, most of them are not entrepreneurs. So they don't fully understand the whole, like, I don't know if I'm gonna have enough money in my bank account this month, or I only get paid once a month because that's when I send out my invoices, you know, and it's just a different struggle and a different way of life. So having other people like that in your network is really important to rely on. And don't be afraid to say when you're having a rough day or when it's really, really hard, because that's probably just you breaking the ice for other people to share their stories too, because we all have those hard days more often than we'd like to admit.
Definitely. Well, everything that Julianne said, but I think a big one that I didn't realize when I first started my business was setting boundaries. I'm very much the people pleaser. And so I'd be like, yes, yes, yes. And when you're a graphic designer, you're handling quite a bit of things. And even like in your web design, like there's just so many different assets. And when you're an entrepreneur, especially a solo entrepreneur, you're handling everything. So you're wearing all the hats. So it's kind of hard to say yes to everything while also simultaneously wearing all those hats. So it's setting up the boundaries and being realistic about your timelines as well. Another thing too, I firmly believe that everything happens for a reason. And yeah, I think just take everything one day at a time, and it's okay to not be okay, and seek support. So Julianne has always been kind of like my buddy when it comes to entrepreneurship. And whenever I had a down day, I had a buddy that I could talk to. So definitely surround yourself. We also have an episode, I think, about community and how important it is to have like your group of people. So find those people to you, and maybe you might meet them at this event too, and come say hi to me too. And yeah, just one day at a time, one day at a time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello. Okay. So my question is for all of you. What would you say, or what advice would you give for someone that has an idea or kind of like an abstract idea of what they want? What would you suggest as the first steps for that person? Like the few first steps to actually put the plan into real world.
Lists, so many lists. Just start writing down everything that you're thinking. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't make any sense, or you start drawing lines, or like things are crazy and you've got drawings in the corner. Like, there is nothing linear about what's going on in your brain, I'm sure. So just write it all down, get it all out, and then even try and explain it to somebody. And then like they can wear headphones, you know, just say it out loud to somebody else, so that you can get a clear idea of what it is that you actually want to do. Because there's so many ideas that go all the time, but then when you finally like start to actually have to put it into words, that's when you start to find the real like good nuggets of what you've got in your head.
It's funny that she said that, because my first thought was to talk it out. So yeah, so write it all down and then talk it out, I think, with somebody, and yeah, just get the ideas flowing. Yeah, and if you have anybody that you think would like that you'd want to work with, I think like talk to them too, or if you can get any advice depending on what you're wanting to do, the more you talk about it, the more you can get ideas and kind of build it from there.
Yeah, I'm going to echo both of them in that putting it out to the world is the best way for it to actually come true, because we can think about it internally for so long and be terrified of like, what if someone laughs at me or they don't think it's a good idea or what might that be? So just have that courage to put it out to the world. And I'll plug another PEIBWA program too called Activate Her. So that's a 6-week program that's facilitated. I don't know when the next one's going to be, but I'm sure there'll be another. And that takes you through step-by-step of building your business plan with a cohort of other female entrepreneurs who are getting started. So that would be a really great thing to apply for as well the next time it comes up, because getting a solid business plan also is an important part of making sure it is a viable business that you can use. So yeah. Exactly.
And it's kind of surprising when you do put your idea out, what other people come back with, and then they'll come out like, oh, did you think about this for a business name? Or what do you think about this? And all these new ideas that are fresh, that because sometimes when you are planning everything, it's so like you're right there in front of it, right? You have to take yourself out of it. But from a branding perspective, I would almost look at like who your competitors are, what they're doing, and see what you can do a little bit different. Because the whole point is that you're wanting to get out in the market and be that person that, oh, I need to go to her for X, Y, and Z, right? So see what makes you stand out and kind of hone in on that a little bit and be different. It's fun.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hello. Wow, that's loud. I do work a 9-to-5 corporate job, by the way. But yeah, I am coming here to just surround myself with people that have done it, so I can do it too. So thanks for being an inspiration. My question would be, how do you work on your imposter that tells you can't? What specific exercise do you do to get over that?
That's an excellent question. If anyone has the answer, please let us know. No, I don't know if there's a specific strategy I have for it, but like even like events like this is totally out of my comfort zone. And yeah, I think you just have to do things and surround yourself with people that encourage you and give you that reassurance that maybe you need in building up your confidence, because it's all self-confidence and being confident in yourself and your abilities and knowing that you are smart and you have great ideas and you have a great business, and just maybe telling yourself it enough until you believe it.
Yeah, fake it till you make it. Yeah. I'm gonna sound so stupid. I like yell at myself. Like when I'm alone. So I had a really sticky situation lately, and I had to send a very aggressive email, and I am not good with confrontation. And I kept thinking like, oh my God, she's gonna think like, it just, my self-doubt was off the charts. And it got to the point where I had like asked people, you know, is this okay? Should I send this? And then I finally just realized like, you just have to do it. I had to do that thing and it needed to be done. And it didn't matter what the outcome was. I had to do it. So then I'm in my bathroom, in my mirror, like, you send that email. But sometimes I just need like somebody to yell at me, and my friends and family are so supportive. They're not going to yell at me. They're not going to tell me just do it. So you got to be your own, I don't know, cheerleader and your own bully, and in the best way. And just, if you have to do something, just know that you have to do it. There's no way around it. Nobody's going to do it for you when you run your own business. There's no person to go to that will do those hard things.
And they do get easier as you do them more too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think practice is the only way through it.
Yeah.
It's that the baby steps, like you have to have courage before you can have confidence, is what I like to repeat as well. So finding that courage to take that little step, do the thing, eventually you'll become more confident in doing whatever it is you're worried about. But also, yeah, you do have to hype yourself up at times. Again, back to that community, making sure that you have folks around you who will help hold up a mirror and show you how amazing that you are. And I really like to suggest having like a list of your strengths or your accomplishments and things like that handy that you can come back and look at and remind yourself of, well, if I've been able to do all of this, of course I can do that too. So it just is a reminder of how far you've already come, because when we're only looking again into that future and thinking like, how am I ever going to get there? Sometimes it is worth taking a little look backwards and saying, well, wow, I didn't think I'd even make it here. Right. And here I am, and I'm standing strong and I'm doing this. And so just that little pep talk with ourselves sometimes is what it takes to just take that next step. Sometimes I find too with the imposter syndrome, it pops for me when I get into comparison mode. Right. So we start looking at, well, so-and-so is doing the thing that I want to do. So I guess I just shouldn't do it, right? Like I'm just going to stay here and whatever. And then you start to doubt yourself and wonder, is there room for us all? I'm here to tell you, yes, there absolutely is. We are all unique in how we bring it. So whatever it is that you want to do, bring your full true self into it as well, because that's going to give you that unique identifier against anybody else who's doing it. And community over competition all day, every day is where it's at. So just surround yourself with the people who are going to help remind you of that.
Exactly. And just piggybacking off of the comparison, actually talking with your peers that are in the same can be impactful. So like when I was graphic designing, freelancing, there's quite a bit on the island. And I was like, oh, they're just so busy. They're so talented. Oh my goodness. How can I compete with them? And sure enough, we had a conversation over a coffee and we both were in tears by the end of it. We're both feeling the same way, because like we have to remind ourselves we're all kind of going through our own personal struggles, even though you might not see it on everybody. But we also have an episode on imposter syndrome too on Thriving Tides. Check it out.
If you ever feel bad about comparison, just remember that there are over 60 ice cream shops on PEI, and 58 of them sell ADL ice cream. So they're all thriving. Works out to 1 for every 3,200 Islander.
Wow. Any other questions? No, that's okay. I think we're probably ready to move on to the next section, which is soon going to be just chatting and mixing and eating that delicious food that got brought out over there too.
Yes, thank you, Julianne, Stephanie, and panelists Rebecca and Kaitlyn. We would now invite you to enjoy some refreshments, mix and mingle, and enjoy some music by Summerside's Nikki Gallant. And we will be back at 7:50 p.m. for a few closing remarks and to also do the draw at the back for a few beautiful door prizes. Thank you.